Hello and welcome back to my language learning FAQ series. This is part 3, and today we're going to talk about pronunciation. A common term for phonology is pronunciation, and today we're going to talk about: is promotion a function of intelligence or a separate skill? What techniques do you use to improve pronunciation? And then how to practice pronunciation in some detail. A hint at the possible separation is that it is possible to read and think, and possibly even speak, in correct sentences with an absolutely atrocious pronunciation. So speaking and working on pronunciation can be at odds with each other when you're trying to speak in a conversation. Pronunciation will be degraded unless you've practiced and ingrained the correct pronunciation. Pronunciation tends to get worse because you're paying more attention to what you're saying than how you're saying it. In terms of CEFR, pronunciation is not a separate skill, but monologue and speaking interaction are. And your pronunciation definitely matters. It doesn't need to be perfect, but depending on the specific exam, you may lose some points if you pronounce some similar sounds in the same way. Even a strong accent is not necessarily deemed hard to understand, though. It's more about making the necessary phonological distinctions than passing for a native. Your aim when speaking is not necessarily to sound native, but to be understandable without any effort from the other party. Where there is also a problem with what's usually termed sound discrimination or phoneme discrimination, this is where you're simply unable to hear the difference in the words. This makes it difficult for you to correct the pronunciation. For example, Spanish speakers who pronounce toast as tost. The more we identify ourselves with and connect emotionally to the speakers of our target language, the more likely we are to pick up a good accent, and the more native it'll sound. Accent is a conscious or subconscious choice. Because we have a number of linguists on our forum, we often get results of scientific studies to these questions. And as far as pronunciation being related to intelligence, there are some studies which this has been shown. But nonverbal intelligence was clearly distinct from academic intelligence. So on skills such as interpersonal communication, pronunciation, and listening comprehension, higher IQ scores were shown to be relatively insignificant. So the next question we're going to cover is: what techniques are there available to improve your pronunciation? Now, here are the primary techniques used by people to improve pronunciation and accent. Auditory drills or audio drills are often done using a limited number of sentences with the words changed for each repetition. So, for example, he asked for the hotel room, he asked for the hotel name, etc. A minimal pair is two words that vary only by a single sound, usually meaning that the sounds may confuse learners, like the F and the V in fan and van in English. Chorusing is to repeat short segments of speech many times with a recording to internalize pronunciation and porosity. And in its current form, chorusing was suggested by Ollie Kajelan. IPA is the International Phonic Alphabet. Shadowing is a technique of language learners invented by Alexander Arguelles, and it is similar to chorusing, but you take the native audio recording with a transcript and you speak along at the same time. Phonetic analysis is a technique used by Luca Lamparello, who breaks down the sentences into porosity, sentence, and word stress. And then accent exaggeration is simply exaggerating the stereotypical accent of a native speaker. This can be perceived as mocking, but it does help with the porosity of the language and the stress patterns. So how do you practice, and how do you use these techniques to practice and improve your pronunciation? Audio drills are repeating similar sentences again and again until you can say them perfectly. In the Foreign Service Institute courses, they change the sentences slightly, often making the sentence use the plural form or changing a single word. Now you can do this yourself by downloading some audio from websites that I've listed here. There are many more resources available on the Language Learner forums for getting audio files. Much of it's broken down into specific languages, so if you're looking for resources, you should probably go there as your first port of call. Now, minimal pairs, as I've said before, are like fan and van in English. Many people tell you that you should never practice minimal pairs. Minimal pairs are good for phonological research and making learners aware of the phonological distinctions, but many people advise you should never automate them pairwise because Hebb's principle that neurons that fire together wire together, and you don't want to necessarily associate these specific words together. Chorusing was invented by Ali Kajalan. Regardless of the language, it involves the same fundamental elements: pitch, loudness, and length. And all of these signal lexical, grammatical, emotional, other characteristics in a spoken conversation. So Dr. Kajalan uses Audacity, which is a free open source audio editing tool, to do this. However, more recently, there are some apps which you can use, like Work Audiobook, which will allow you to select the sentences, do repeat, speed the sentences up, slow it down, etc. I have a video that I've done previously about this, and I'll put a link on a page here or in the video description. IPA, or the International Phonic Alphabet, uses symbols to represent distinct sounds used in speech. Now, you may have encountered IPA before in many dictionaries. This is so that the reader is given an indication of the sounds of the words and its pronunciation. So it's very useful to know the IPA for pronunciation, since you can use it in conjunction with dictionaries and the various sounds. Now, the International Phonic Association was founded in 1886 and is the oldest organization for phoneticians. The association's mission is to promote the scientific study of phonics, and in 2013, the International Phonics Association celebrated its 125th year since the first publication of the IPA alphabet. Now, shadowing gives you an opportunity to practice the physical feel of articulating your target language. So you should start out shadowing with short audio and text, and then you can move on to longer works as you improve. Now, this technique is mainly used by intermediate students, and it's for continuous amounts of text. If you wanted to practice a phrase by phrase, sentence by sentence, then you probably want to start with the chorusing method. Now, phonic analysis is a technique used to map out sounds, stresses, and intonations in the language. Luca Lamparello gives a great breakdown on his blog about how to do this and how it works, and I'll put a link in the description or later in the video to his blog site where he covers how to actually do a phonic analysis of sentences and sounds. Here you're imitating the accent of the target language in an overly exaggerated manner. Now, the reason that people have an accent in a foreign language is because elements of the sounds, rhythms, and stresses of their native languages are showing through. So by imitating this when you speak in your own language, you can concentrate on the properties of the sounds even when spontaneously speaking. And you can bypass inhibitions and the linguistic ego, which might impede some learners. Now, when you do this in your target language, you're helping to improve your pronunciation, stresses, etc. when you speak. So what do I mean by this? Basically, you'll often hear comedians talk about the German accent where they use a D or Z, and they'll say, this is the place where I have put the item. And so you want to take that sort of comedic interpretation of an accent and overlay it on the target language. So if you're learning German, if you take that accent, you're sort of overlaying the sound and intonation of that language in your speech. And this is to help you improve and determine stresses. So where do you go from here? You can search for the PDF for quality practice pronunciation with Google, and you can download the free PDF. The other two, Practical Introduction to Phonics and Courses in Phonics, are available at good booksellers like Amazon, etc. On the internet, you can obviously go to the forum languagelearners.org. If you wanted to get FSI courses or the Foreign Service Institute, which is the people that train American diplomats, those courses have been released. They're in the public domain, and you can get the audio drills and the languages if you go to this site. And I've also included Luca's blog, where you can look for his insights into phonic analysis and other techniques that he uses to learn languages. Right, well, thank you very much for participating today and listening to the video. If you've made it all the way to the end, I would appreciate it if you like and subscribe. It does help get the word out a bit about the videos, and I really appreciate your time, and I enjoyed doing these videos for you. All right, thank you very much, and I'll see you soon.